Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Gurudev. Jai Gauragi Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gauragi Bo. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Hare Krishna Balaram Logira Shri Shri Gonitai Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. What's the number? 2? 2. What's the number? Chapter what? Chapter 5? Chapter 5, text. Oh yeah, text. Okay, chapter. Right back. Oh, here we are. Chapter 15, text. What number? 8? Yasya vacha prajasava gavastan yevarayantritaha haranti balyamayatas tashmai mukayati namaha Yasya vacha prajasava Gavastanyeva yanchitaha Haranti balyam ayata Tashmai mukyayati namaha Yasya prajasava Gavastanyeva yanchitaha Haranti balamayatas Tashmai mukyayati namaha. Somebody else? Anyone else? Yasya, of whom, Vacha, by the Vedic directions, Praja, living entities, Sava, all, Gavaha, bulls, Tantya, by a rope, Eva, as, Yantritaha, are directed, Haranti, offer, take away, Barim, presentation, ingredients for worship, Ayataha, under control, Tashmai, unto him, Mukyaya, unto the chief person, Te, unto you, Namaha, respectful obeisances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation: all the living entities within the universe are conducted by the Vedic directions, as the bull is directed by the rope attached to its nose. No one can violate the rules laid down in the Vedic literatures. To the chief person who has contributed the Vedas, we offer our respect. Good. The Vedic literatures are the laws of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot violate the injunctions given in the Vedic literatures any more than one can violate the state laws. Any living creature who wants real benefit in life must act according to the direction of the Vedic literature. The conditioned souls who have come into this material world for material sense gratification are regulated by the injunctions of the Vedic literatures. Sense gratification is just like salt. One cannot take too much or too little. One must take some salt in order to make one's foodstuff palatable. Those conditioned souls who have come to this material world should utilize their senses according to the direction of the Vedic literature. Otherwise, they will be put into more miserable conditions of life. No human being or demigod can enact laws like those of the Vedic literature, because the Vedic regulations are prescribed by the Supreme Lord. Om Agyantimirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chakshvalalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Yes, this is a very interesting verse about the regulative principles. You know, there's a nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita. I'm just trying to find it. Where is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. What's it? Oh, yeah, there it is. 4.7, famous verse. Whenever and wherever there is a predominant rise, or there is a decline in religious practice, a descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Prabhupada, he explains in that verse that, Krishna is not forced to appear in this world. I mean, we are forced to appear according to our karma. We've got no control. But Krishna, he simply comes, Prabhupada says, out of his own sweet will. He comes down to show us his pastimes, to conquer our minds, to give pleasure to our hearts, to attract us to that spiritual world, to our real home in the spiritual. He comes down and performs all these transcendental pastimes to attract us, so we can see how we can enjoy on the spiritual platform, in the spiritual world. He comes to attract us to that spiritual world, to manifest a desire within our heart to go back to Godhead. And he comes when there's a predominance of irreligiosity and a disappearance of true religion. And Prabhupada mentions in that verse that principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas by the Lord himself. If one does not properly execute such rules of the Vedas, one is considered to be irreligious. Yes. I mean, for the common people of this world, the mere mention of the word self-control, people think you're crazy. They think, how horrible. Controlling the senses. My God. Following rules and regulations. Because people, they just live in this very simplistic idea that whatever I feel is good for me is good for me. They don't realize that, humans are responsible for their actions. And there's certain laws of karma which govern the functions of this universe, which hold us accountable. So we see in today's world, anarchy rules, doesn't it? It rules the world, just like this is this massive stupidity. Just billions of people who are just totally against institutions, especially religious institutions. They think, anarchists, especially the hardcore anarchists, they think life is all about just do whatever you feel. Whenever you feel, don't listen to anyone, don't follow anyone. Ultimately, just be totally selfish. It's just all about me, my selfish pleasure. Yes, when people hear about that we follow certain principles, they think we're crazy. People are so much enjoying. I just went up in Brisbane just recently, and there's this guy walking through town, he had this big smile on his face, big smirk. You know, he had his arm around his girlfriend, had a can of beer in one hand, had a Big Mac and a cigarette in the other hand. He's thinking, you know, I've got it all covered, you know. I'm the enjoyer. Actually, Guru Govinda Swami gave a nice example, you know, just like in India. You know, if you go to India, you see these hogs. It's a dangerous place, you know, for the village people, because they just pass still, you know, in the bush on the side of the road. And these hogs, they just love this stool, the hot stool. They almost bowl people over trying to get that stool. But when they're eating that stool, they're like eating away. They're looking up at the humans and they're thinking, these humans are so less intelligent. This stool is so delicious. These humans are so less intelligent. They don't even want this stool. They just leave it by the side of the road. They just disregard it. Guru Govinda Swami gives this example, you know. So people, they think, you know, that we're out here enjoying this world, you know, sex, illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, gambling, whatever. And these Hare Krishnas, they're so less intelligent, they don't even want this stuff, you know. So as devotees, we understand that Krishna's laws and directions and advice to us are not simply to repress us unnaturally. Rather, they're there to ultimately protect us, to help guide us in the right direction for our eternal benefit, so our life will be more meaningful and our destiny more beautiful. You know, if you look at a piece of paper, it has no real value. It's a piece of paper. But when the government assigns certain value to the paper in the form of paper money, it has value and it's useful. Similarly, without understanding the purpose behind this beautiful creation of the Lord and the ultimate purpose to the human form of life, our lives may have very little meaning and very little value. So these principles are the direct laws of the Lord, and only the Lord, as Prabhupada mentions here, can manufacture a system of religion. Therefore, these principles of Dharma or religion they're clearly indicated throughout this Vedic literature. And the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto Krishna and only and nothing more. You know, I know when I first became a devotee, you know, because I came from like a pretty fallen background, and you know, out there, you're considered pretty cool, you know, if you take lots of intoxication, you know, you just do all sorts of, you know, unreligious things. You're considered pretty cool, you know. And when I met the devotees, I was thinking, wow, these guys, they're so straight. But they're so cool. It seems like a contradiction, you know. They're really cool people, but how can you be cool and really straight? You know, no. So these Vedic principles, they push one towards complete surrender unto Krishna. And when such principles are disturbed by these demoniac atheists, the Lord appears. Either he personally, in his original form of Krishna or Lord Caitanya, or he comes in various incarnations, or he sends his representatives who appear as the Vaishnavacharyas, you know, the bona fide spiritual masters who act on his behalf. So Krishna teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita that the goal of life for a yogi or a devotee or a self-realized soul is to gain liberation from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Goloka Vrindavan, the kingdom of God, where we can live eternally with Krishna. But he also explains that one cannot achieve this perfection of life without being self-controlled, without being self-disciplined, without being obedient to the instructions of Guru and Krishna. Yes. But the reality is it's not so easy to control the senses and the mind, which are sometimes compared to venomous serpents because they want to act very loosely without restriction. Therefore, a yogi or a devotee must be very strong to control these serpent-like senses and mind. Prabhupada says, like a snake charmer. You see in India, the people, they have the cobras there, and they control them with the flute playing. So Bhagavad Gita tells us this is the real test of a yogi or a devotee. They're able to control the senses, which include the mind, according to their plan. But Krishna warns us that the mind is always restless, turbulent, obstinate, very strong, more difficult to control than a raging wind. And the senses are so strong and impetuous that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Therefore, Krishna tells us, you cannot trust the mind or the senses. For even one of the roaming senses can carry away a man's intelligence. Yes. Therefore, we must learn to control the mind and senses, not simply let them control us. You know, Bhagavad Gita tells us that higher than the senses is the mind, higher than the mind is the intelligence, higher than the intelligence is the soul. So a true yogi should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength bring the senses under control. Yes. How to do that? You know, on one hand, we have to be very practical about techniques for keeping our consciousness pure. It means seriously taking up our spiritual practices on a daily basis. You know, hearing from sacred literatures, chanting sacred mantras, eating pure sanctified foodstuffs, Krishna Prasadam, keeping in good association, you know, just fully absorbing the mind and the senses, filling up our lives with thoughts of Krishna and just activities in loving devotional service to Krishna. So on one hand, yes, we have to be very serious about practicing Krishna consciousness, but on the other hand, we have to be humble and understand that material contamination, it's an ever-present reality in our conditioned state. Therefore, we have to learn to cope with it, use our brains, use our intelligence to rise above it, and we have to pray. Pray to Krishna for protection and guidance and just firm determination that we can continue in our spiritual journey. And if we are sincerely trying, you know, in the 11th canto, actually Krishna mentions that even if we are sincerely trying, yet we find difficulty in coming up to the highest standard, you know, perhaps due to, you know, past conditioning. I mean, we've been in this, we don't know how long we've been in this material, maybe tens of thousands of lifetimes. So there's all these some scars there, you know, from previous lives that can affect us. You know, past conditioning, even just due to the bad influences of this modern, you know, this modern age that surrounds us. So even if we're finding some difficulty, Krishna says, he says, don't be overly depressed or morose. No, don't be too hard on yourself. You know, don't put yourself down, because, and we've seen this in the past with some devotees, this may lead to us giving up our spiritual practices altogether. We think, you know, I'm not good enough to be a devotee, or I can't follow the system, you know. But Krishna advised we should simply remain in our spiritual practices, have faith that in due course the Supreme Lord, He'll purify our hearts. He'll support us and help us come to the higher stage. We have to be patient and determination. You have to be patient because, the pure devotional service doesn't come overnight. You have to be very patient. Because, every day, actually we're at war. We're in a battlefield here in this material world. We're in a war with Maya, this powerful, deluding material energy. And it's Maya. She's a very clever thief. She's going to try and steal away our Krishna consciousness, our greatest asset. Yes. Sometimes Maya gets in your ear and tells you. Actually, Caritamrita Swami uses this example. He says, sometimes Maya gets in your ear and tells you, see, you are not strong. Give in to your weakness. Give up your false pretense of being a saintly person. This is something you've just got to go through. While you're going against your real nature, you won't last. Sometimes Maya does that, gets in your ear, right? But nowhere in the sastras does it say, you've just got to go through it. Sastras say no. Take up seriously techniques for purification. Control your senses and mind. Practice your sadhana. Follow the principles of Krishna consciousness and the Varnashram system. Fight back. Be victorious. We've got to be strong like Arjuna. Arjuna, he was so strong and invincible. We've got to be strong like Arjuna, sitting on that chariot. We're also sitting on a chariot, aren't we? This material body. Where on the chariot are we sitting? Anyone know? In the heart, right? And who's sitting right next to us? Krishna as a super soul. Yes. So it's an eternal combat, you could say, between good and evil, between materialism and spiritualism, between right and wrong action. It's always going on. But if Krishna's on our side, we will ultimately always be victorious. Just like the Battle of Kurukshetra, the armies of the Pandavas was significantly less, but because Krishna was on their side, ultimately there was victory. But it's not so easy. It's not so easy, The world doesn't make it easy. It's inevitable we'll face obstacles as we step onto the spiritual path. Obstacles coming from within us, from ourselves, due to our past conditioning and material attachments, material desires, so much contamination from previous lives even, and also the world around us. Especially in the early stages, it can be kind of disorientating to learn that everything we assume we knew about the world and ourselves isn't true or is as meaningful as we thought. Yes. However, after practicing Krishna consciousness for some time, we just carried into this amazing lifestyle, which changes our ways of thinking and viewing the world, viewing ourselves, and viewing life itself. Therefore, we need to, you could say, navigate through the obstacles of life and embrace this spiritual transformation. Yes. Sometimes spiritual progress requires that we leave unfavorable habits behind. But it's not easy. As the saying goes, old habits die hard. But we can answer the call, for positive change by simply filling our lives with alternatives that lift us away from unfavorable habits, give us positive strength to rise above all excuses of the mind. Yes. Yes, unfavourable habits. You know, some people, they join. I remember there was one devotee in New Zealand, and then they used to go out and take him out on book distribution when he was a new bhakta. But every now and then he used to sneak off from the party and go into McDonald's and get a Big Mac. You know, he was attached. He was so attached, you know, he couldn't quite, you know, give it up. You know, the temptation was too strong. But of course, after some time, he just gave it up. You know, he actually became a very advanced devotee, that devotee. Yes, Bhakti Yoga, we have a whole range of spiritual technologies and activities which will naturally experience a higher taste, a higher consciousness. Prabhupada mentions here, inner peace, inner pleasure, ongoing happiness and true enlightenment. You know, it's only because people haven't found a higher purpose in their lives and a greater understanding of life's meaning, haven't mastered their mind and senses, that they feel unsatisfied, unhappy, and unloved. Yes. You know, surveys show that so many people in the world, they truly feel it. They've never really truly been loved in their life. Many people don't even know what love really is. The surveys show that. You know, love, it seems, has developed too vague a meaning in our modern world. And Bhagavad Gita tells us why. It's because it's lust that governs people's lives instead of real love. And it's this lust for material enjoyment that forces us to view the world and live in this self-centered, egocentric, competitive, exploitive way, simply seeing how everyone and everything can be utilized by me for my own selfish pleasure and enjoyment. You know, it's lust that encourages us to exploit the earth. It's lust that makes us want to climb to the top of the success ladder, not caring for others. You know, it's lust that makes people indulge in sensual activities and relationships that may hurt or degrade others. We see in today's world there's thousands and probably millions of people's lives have been shattered through being exploited by others. So it's this lust. Bhagavad Gita tells this lust which burns like fire, is never satisfied, cannot make us happy. It's all Maya's trick to keep us bound up in illusion. You know, you think, if I just gratify my senses in this way or that way, whether it's like intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, whatever, I'll get some relief. I'll get some satisfaction. I'll get some enjoyment, some pleasure. But everyone's experienced and knows it's not real enjoyment. It's just a false sense of relief, just an illusory relief, a false hope of relief and satisfaction and enjoyment. And the nature of material enjoyment, as I said, the anticipation of and expectation of the enjoyment of material sense gratification far exceeds the actual enjoyment. And the nature of material enjoyment is the more you get, the more you want, the less satisfied you are. It just leads to total frustration. And you have to pay dearly. How do you have to pay? You have to live with horrible consciousness. And you're held responsible for your actions according to the laws of karma, which will lead to future suffering in this world, either in this life or the next life. You know, probably one of the greatest myths of human society is that sexual enjoyment is the cause of ultimate happiness. Thus, it's become the overwhelming obsession of modern society. And if you're not highly interested in it, you're considered, very crank However, surveys show that people are bored with sex. They're bored with it. They're hoping against hope that it'll make them happy. They're going to the psychiatrist. They're reading on buying books, how to improve their enjoyment, whatever. Yes, it's people by nature are spiritual, yet they've decided to embark upon this long and frustrated path of lording it over the material nature for the pleasure of their temporary material senses. This is the modern day world. And what are the results? Their individual lives and their social arrangements are simply models of failure. So many proud and mighty nations of the world are just staggering under mountains of social problems. Environmental problems, diseases, wars, violence, poverty, crime, exploitation, oppression, unhappiness. So many frustrated, depressed and confused people turning to drugs and alcohol, even suicide. The World Health Organization has issued this statement that by the mid-2020s that depression will be one of the biggest diseases in the world, next to heart disease. And people that take a good look at the world, they can see that even though our standard of living has increased, our lives, materialistic lives, are better than ever, people are becoming more and more unhappy than ever. Especially, they say, in Europe and in America especially, it's very prominent that there's just this epidemic of unhappiness and depression. There's billions of people now on antidepressant drugs, consulting divorce lawyers, reaching midlife crisis with a sense of emptiness. People just, like I said, they're just turning to drugs and alcohol, especially, they say, in places like England and Germany and places like that. The young people, they're just drinking so much alcohol. They just drink and drink and drink and drink till they're completely oblivious. And of course the drugs, we've got all the drugs, the ice and the crack and you name it. It's just flooding the world. Tons and tons of drugs are just flooding the world, and people are just becoming very, very, it's just bringing them further. It's one of the greatest forms of oppression on the planet, this attachment and addiction. Many people, even psychiatrists, they say if you repress lust and sex desire, it's very dangerous and it leads to mental disorders. So we agree with that. Lust needs to be eliminated, not suppressed. You can never get free from that which is suppressed. So celibacy means control, not suppression. And control happens naturally when you purify the mind, purify the intelligence, purify the consciousness through spiritual practices. So it's not a matter of suppression, but it's a dynamic conversion process. A dynamic conversion process. Controlling the sex energy, conserving it, then diverting it into higher channels and finding into spiritual energy. In Ayurveda they talk about this. How one acquires, by controlling the sex energy, one acquires superhuman mystic powers. Sharp intelligence, health, vitality. The mind and senses become fully spiritualized, and one ultimately becomes blessed with the highest form of mysticism, which is called Some City. Pure love of God. So this is why Krishna, who is our ultimate well-wisher and dearest friend, is always getting us to turn to him for shelter and guidance. It's not Krishna who's just put us in this world and has abandoned us. You know, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us that from me comes knowledge, remembrance and forgetfulness. This means if you want to remember Krishna, Krishna will help you. But if you want to forget Krishna and be in Maya, you also need Krishna's help. That's how dependent we are on Krishna. You know, Krishna is so wonderful and so lovable. And, everything about Krishna is just so amazing that you're helpless to forget him, even if you try to. Unless Krishna as a super soul helps you to forget him. So when you desire something else besides Krishna, Krishna is the super soul in your heart, helps you. Krishna arranges you to forget him. And it's mentioned in this verse, that's how we left our relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world. We wanted to try something else. And Prabhupada gives an example. Suppose you enjoy eating lots of halva every day. Very fond of halva. It's funny, I remember that story of Tamal Krishna Goswami. He tells us, when he came to the temple, when he was a young hippie, he really got addicted to the halva. Every day he'd come to the temple to get the halva. And then the devotee said, you can't have any more halva till you do some service. He said, yeah, I'll do it. It got him doing service. And he started getting there, because then he became a devotee. So suppose you enjoy eating lots of halva every day. Then one day you think, rather than halva, I'll just try something else today. It's not that you suddenly don't like halva, but you just want to try something else. So similarly, from your heart, you momentarily desire to utilize your independence and your free will and enjoy separately from Krishna, just momentarily. Therefore, Krishna said, so you want something else? I'll give you your chance. Here is a world, planet Earth, where there's no visible God. Give it your best shot. So we come down here. Krishna allows us to forget who he is. We forget who we are as eternal servants of Krishna. He covers our consciousness so we can really try and enjoy and be happy and satisfied, independent of him. But we soon find out we're frustrated in our vain attempt. Yet out of total ignorance, we squander our whole life and many thousands and thousands of lifetimes caught up in this temporary bodily conception of life. And this bodily conception of life, what it does, it just locks you into your own little illusory universe where everything's centered around this misconception that I am this material body and the goal of my life is simply to enjoy this body. And everything in relation to this body is mine. It's called the false ego. That's why it's such a relief to become a devotee, because you can stop pretending to be something that you're not, to be what you really are, which is just a servant of Krishna. Such a relief, such a nice feeling. So this false ego, it's a false sense of absorption which results in one's consciousness becomes covered. One cannot understand things that where they are, who they are as a spirit soul and how they fit into this cosmic manifestation. You're just like a lost soul. You're like a little lost child in a big forest. And that was like all of us before we came to Krishna consciousness. We're like little children lost in this big forest, the material world. So when you're lost in this forest, you become desensitized in understanding your relationship with Krishna, how you belong to Krishna, how you're an eternal servant of Krishna. And it's something we just cut off our relationship with Krishna and just view ourselves as independent. You're thinking, I am the creator of my own destiny, I am my own protector, my own maintainer. This world was simply created solely for my enjoyment. So in Krishna consciousness, we soon come to realize that only Krishna, who is the very source of love and joy, can make us happy. And only when we revive our love for Him can we conquer over this lust and material conditioning and become completely happy and satisfied and find that internal balance and peace in our lives. Therefore, devotees who are seriously practicing Krishna consciousness, they're very careful to guard and protect their Krishna consciousness at all times. Because for them, it's so important to develop this pure, loving, devotional service. If you want to become, especially if you want to become an effective, empowered preacher, or even if you just want to go back to Godhead. So just like when you're feeling a cold or flu coming on, what do? You take lots of vitamin C, echinacea, lemon and ginger drinks, just to ward it off. So just as you know things related to your body, you have to be in tune with your consciousness and know how to refine and finely tune your consciousness. So when you feel your consciousness is not good, or as we say, when you're feeling you're in a bit of maya, bit of illusion, you're feeling not too Krishna conscious, you need to know how to take shelter of good instructions, given by the Guru, Sadhu, Sastra. Take shelter of the holy name, take shelter of the scriptures, take shelter of devotees who have strong faith. It's such an important thing, association of devotees. It's so important to associate with devotionally minded friends, who share our spiritual aspirations. This is what really supports us in our spiritual journey and charges our spiritual batteries. So, yes, every day. So we have to strategize how we can balance my time, how I can fulfill my material duties in life, still have spare time for meditating, chanting, hearing spiritual topics. Life is just, you could say, a dynamic process. We're always moving towards something. So if we want to reclaim our real freedom, you have to really put our hearts into our spiritual practices. And the Vedas assure that, if we just follow Krishna's system, we'll benefit both individually and collectively. It means if you do the right thing, you get the right result. It's a matter of faith in Krishna and faith in the process of Dharma. Yes. Yes, Sister Vaya. So I'll just finish there. Yes. Spiritual freedom. You're getting free from... I was mentioning just spiritual freedom. What is spiritual freedom? Of course, it's freedom from material consciousness. I know back in the 70s and 60s, people were really, and even today, they want this freedom, And I know back in the 60s, freedom, they thought was just to, walk naked down a country road smoking a big joint. But now we learn that real freedom is freedom from material consciousness, freedom from lust and greed and envy, illusion, duplicity, and of course, ultimately freedom from all material suffering, and ultimately freedom from the cycle of birth and death. This is real freedom, real spiritual freedom. And to this Krishna consciousness, it's open to everyone to come and experience how true spirituality opens the door to an extraordinary life. of transforming consciousness and awakening our natural love for the Supreme Lord and each other. And this love, it flows out into the world in the form of compassion for all living entities. Hare Krishna. Does anyone have any questions? Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaura Premanandi.